Great. Well, very glad to be here. Thanks for that introduction. It's been a while since I've seen KJ. I'm going to give my talk like this instead of from behind the dais, so that I can imagine myself to be Geraldo Rivera, or maybe Oprah Winfrey, which would mean at the end of the session that you would all get a brand new car. Given the energy crisis, it would be a Prius. So I have a PowerPoint that we're going to be going through. It seems to be moving, and hopefully it will be moving to you too. And I'm glad that we got it working, because we had a little technical difficulty at the beginning, and there's a few things worse than a PowerPoint without power. One of them is a PowerPoint without a point, and too many of us have sat through those. So one of the other technical things that we have going is that I have a very interesting clicker to move slides, which is I just go like this, and then they move. So what I was asked to do is talk a little bit about the changing face of California and how that impacts your work and education, and how it impacts the issues of leadership that Senator Romero was talking about. And there is a tendency, of course, for many of us to be thinking about short-term pressures and politics. This is a picture of what many of us were doing after we got our last 401k statements, right? Starting to cry about the stock market. And that's someone right there, where right by the toilet bowl it says, "Dear investor, please deposit money here," which is certainly what it felt like recently. So there's a tendency for us to focus in on the short-term crisis. And of course, there's a lot of debates about what's going to happen with the stimulus package, with Rush Limbaugh and Barack Obama facing off. You can perhaps guess from that what side I'm on, although I realize I'm in Orange County, so I'll be as level-headed as possible with my discussion. So there's a tendency for us to think about the short-term pressures in politics, which we need to, the immediate work that we do in a crisis, but it's also, and this is just kind of a chart of the monthly unemployment rates in Los Angeles, Bay Area, California. You can see what's been going on in the last year, that sort of dramatic increase in unemployment. And so it's right to focus on those things. Next. But it's often good to look long-term as well. And this was driven home to me most when I was academic, but also doing some community organizing in Los Angeles in the 80s and early 90s, in the wake of the Los Angeles civil unrest, the largest civil unrest in the United States. Many of us were afterwards scrambling from meeting to meeting, thinking that if we just went to one more meeting, we'd solve something. You ever done that? And in the midst of one of those meetings, a community activist leaned back and said, "You know what? There's an immediate need to think long term." And literally out of that meeting came a variety of the groups like the Los Angeles Alliance for a New Economy, the focus on community benefits agreements, the idea of really thinking long term about how to change the economic structure that had produced the despair that in turn had produced the civil unrest. So what I want to do is to ask you to spend a little bit of time, even in the midst of this crisis, thinking about three sort of long-term trends that are affecting our work and that are affecting the nature of leadership as we look forward, both for ourselves and for the youth that, for whom you design these programs. And those three trends are really the demographic trends, the distributional trends, and the economic trends. Can I bother somebody for a glass of water? Is that one that perhaps has not a lot of lipstick on it, for example? Oh, thank you. That was wonderful. So, as we think about those trends next, the first one to notice is the rapid changing demography of California. This is a chart which shows us the demographics of California between 1980 and 2000, when we went from being roughly 2/3 Anglo in 1980 to being majority minority by the year of the 2000 census. I actually remember the day that occurred. You know how demographers always say that they know an exact day when something happens, like the 300 millionth baby was born today? You're like, how did you know that? His name is Jose. He lives in Fresno. You're like, God, this is weird, right? Well, December 15th, 1999, I kept getting phone calls all day long from reporters who were saying, we became majority minority today. We became majority minority today in California. What's it mean? What's it mean? And finally, I couldn't figure out what to say, so I said, well, I have no idea. But we're having a salsa party at my house tonight to celebrate. In the spirit of the new California, everyone's invited. They just have to learn a new step. And that's part of the big change that we've been going through, is that our leadership styles are changing. We all need to learn a new step in a situation in which there is no longer a majority. Interesting fact about this is that this demographic change between 1980 and 2000 that we experienced in that 20 years is roughly the demographic change that the U.S. will go through between the year 2000 and 2050. So our last 20 years foreshadow the U.S.'s next 50. And you remember what a pleasant time those last 20 were in terms of race relations in California. Tensions around civil unrest, tensions around immigration, an OJ trial even, gosh. So this last 20 years is the U.S.'s next 50. And you can see that one of the things that's driven that, interestingly in California, was the growing percent of immigrants. And I think this is actually an interesting chart. These are two lines. Normally when people say that the percent foreign-born has been growing steadily in the United States, what they forget to do is to say, well, where has it been growing? And this basically, the top line is just California, and it is in this graph being separated from the rest of the United States. Something, by the way, many people in the United States think probably would be a good idea, and many of us in California concur. But wow, that was dramatic. I guess that was the act of separation. So, why don't you go back? Thank you. So, are you from Minnesota or something? Did you resent that? Anyway. So what this chart shows you at the top is that the share of foreign-born was growing dramatically in California from 1970, through 1990, and it's actually starting to taper off now, right? Our share of foreign-born is essentially beginning to peak. We're getting a lot less new arrivals. It's a much more settled population. In the rest of the United States, the share of foreign-born basically didn't start increasing until about the year 2000, which is why there's all this tension popping up in these new locations, because while it looks like it was happening all over the United States, it was mostly happening like in my neighborhood. So, so we go to the next slide. We also see that this is in Los Angeles County, that there's been a tremendous change in where the foreign-born live. This is as of the year 1980, and the browner the area here, the more the percent foreign-born. And what you can see is that in 1980, the higher percent of foreign-born were sort of in the downtown LA area, typical entry point of Westlake, Pico Union, a little bit of East LA on down. By the year 2000, next slide. Let's do that again because I really like that ooh, ah. Back it up again. Yeah, ooh, okay. Ah, okay. So what you can see is the tremendous growth in the immigrant population in the San Gabriel Valley, in the San Fernando Valley, and if we included orange, down here in Anaheim, Santa Ana, etc. So this is a population that's growing all over California. And next slide. For example, in LA County, and tomorrow we're releasing a report that we profiled in the Los Angeles Times about immigrant integration in Los Angeles. In LA County, 1 in 3 county residents is foreign-born. Nearly half of our workforce is immigrant. 2/3 of our children are the children of immigrants. 90% of those kids are U.S. born. They're not going anywhere. So how we do by them and their parents will determine the future of the region. Next slide. Now, of course, California is not standing still. This is the slides that are showing demographic changes looking forward according to the Department of Finance. And bottom line here is that the percent African American is projected to stay roughly the same. The percent Asian is projected to stay roughly the same. Interestingly, I think because most people ask this question later anyway, so I'll pretend that